Okay, today we're going to take a look at the various tools within Premiere Pro, right here in our Tools window. So first we have our Selection tool, and if I mouse over, you'll notice that you get a tooltip, and the tooltip also has a shortcut key in parentheses. So if I hit V, it will get me the Selection tool. If I hit C, it will switch to the Razor tool. And I'm pressing V or C on the keyboard to jump between those. Okay, and same goes for the rest of the tools here. Okay, so we have the Track Select Forward tool, and that's keyboard shortcut A. And you'll notice at the bottom on the right-hand side, there's a triangle. And if I mouse down on that, I press down, I'll get this drop-down contextual menu for some hidden tools. So let's go to the Track Select Backward tool, and here we have Ripple tool, Rolling Edit tool, and Rate Stretch tool. Again, our Razor tool. We have a Slip tool and a Slide tool. We have our Pen tool, a Rectangle tool, an Ellipse tool, a Hand tool, a Zoom tool, and our Type and Vertical Type tools. So starting with our Selection tool, we'll, I just want to show you now down here. Here's a tip. I could drag and change the scale of the timeline by dragging at the very bottom, or I could navigate through the timeline with this bar here. So that's what I'm doing in case you're following along and wondering what I'm doing here. And I just want to get in a little tighter into the timeline to just a few clips to use as an example. So here I'm selecting my first clip. I could raise it up to another track. We have video 1, 2, 3 tracks. Same thing for sound, audio 1, 2, 3, and if we scroll down 4 for a sound bed I dropped in. Okay, so I could use the here I could scrub on my timeline. So that's taking the playhead and moving it back and forth. For sound and picture is known as scrubbing. And same for audio. I could take sound, and if it's not linked, and I'll show you linking and unlinking in a moment, if it's not linked, I could move it anywhere on the within the audio tracks. Now if let's just say I have these two clips and they're synchronized, they're linked together. So if they're linked, whenever you move one, the other will follow. So that means that they're in sync with one another. Whenever you record video and sound and import your clips, they will be in sync with one another unless you unsync them. And in this case, I recorded some voiceover, so that's why they're out of sync. But I can hold down the Control key on my keyboard, and if I navigate here, I could go to unlink. That's one way of doing it. Or link if I wanted them linked together and staying in sync. And if you go to clip over here, we could see what the keyboard shortcut is within our contextual menu, which is unlink. So again, that's unlink is Command L if you're using a Mac. So I'm moving this around. It's linked together. I go Command L, and you could see they're unlinked. Now notice what happened when I unlink them. So we have within the brackets, it shows video, and that lets us know that it's we're linked up. But if I do Command L to unlink it, well, those brackets disappear. So that's a good signal that your clips are not in sync or linked together for video and sound. So that's the select tool. I could move clips around. I could take the clip from in the middle and bring it to the front. I could, shift and use the sequence as kind of the palette of how I want to create and tell the stories within the picture and the sound. Okay, so now we have the track select forward and the track select backward tool. So the track select forward tool, I'm going to pull this out so we could have a wider view. So track select forward, you click on this, you click A, and you could, anything that you click from that point on becomes a selection from the point that you click all the way to the end of the sequence. So let's just say in the center of this, you wanted to open that up and drop a clip in, you can. Now the one trick with this, and you have to be aware of, is whenever you do this, you might have your sound isn't in sync. Like if we look right here, I'm just going to go in a little tighter. We could see a clip. The very first clip is selected, but here we have, this is known as an L cut. So the picture ends, but the sound goes on right here before the selection. So right here in the blue that's unselected, it's matched up with the sound, and then the picture stops, but the sound carries over into the next shot. And if we were doing the reverse, which this could also be, would be a J cut. And the J cut is that the sound comes in before the picture. So maybe you had a cutaway or a shot of something else before it, and then the picture follows. But be very aware that when you do use these selection tools, that you could lose sync. So here I'll click it, and if I drag, you could see there's clearly a gap where the sound is. So if you see that, be aware of it, and try and identify how you want to make that change. Here's an instance where we could use, and I'm skipping a little ahead, our razor tool. So if we used our razor tool and knew, okay, well, I want the sound to split exactly at this point and carry over when I do that select forward tool, then I could split the sound right here. So let me edit undo and get in a little tighter. So let's just say this is where we want to start. I could make, there's no cut there. I use the razor tool, I click once, and now I split that clip. Now if I do the select forward tool, I can now create that separation. So by doing that, I don't have to worry about the picture stopping and the sound continuing, or vice versa, the sound stopping and the picture continuing. Okay, so now another option is the track select backwards tool, and that's Shift A. So we have A and Shift A. A, Shift A. Now, if I do this, if I select this, I am grabbing everything from where I click all the way to the beginning of my sequence, and I could shift it around. So I can kind of bring them back together again. I'm just doing edit undo, or Command Z, Command Shift Z for redo. These are really convenient when you're making changes. If you're making any changes and you've made significant progress, but you want to experiment a bit, I recommend doing duplicates of your sequences or saving your project as the name of your project alternative. So you have all the work that you did preserved in the original, and you're kind of making another version that could be your sandbox where you experiment more with your cuts and changes that you're maybe envisioning. Okay, so that is the track forward and track track select forward, track select backwards tools. One more thing I want to show you when I do that is I have the sound bed underneath. Let me try and bring it up again using my selection tool. Another thing the selection tool could do is raise your level up, and at the very bottom you'll see the dB, the decibels, will increase. So
it goes to your wall outlet.
So I brought that sound bed up. So what happens if I use this track select forward tool and I just want to grab these, let me pull that out a bit. Let's get some more real estate on our timeline. Yeah, so now I'm doing this select track forward or track select forward tool. But you'll notice as I click it, it's also selecting, because it's directly underneath it or within this column, is the sound bed. So the sound bed's coming along with it. Well, what if I don't want the sound bed to move? Well, let me edit undo, and we have the ability to lock an entire track. So now I know with confidence that if I make any changes here, my sound bed is going to stay in place. It's not going to shift around with any of the changes that I'm making above it because of this lock. Also, we also get the question, well, how do I separate, how do I delete my videos or delete my sound independent of one another? Well, one way is what we showed you earlier, which is unlocking, unlinking your clip between the video and sound, and then you could independently select one or the other and click the delete key. Or another option is that you lock your video sequence or your video track rather, and click anywhere on your sound for your sequence where you want to delete it, and click the delete key. And you don't have to unlink your video and your sound. You could select everything and click delete, everything within that track, and click delete, and it will delete it without needing to unlink your picture and sound. Okay, so one more thing I want to show, because it's very easy to do with the track select tool, is when I use this the track select forward tool rather, when I use the selection tool, I can highlight the gap in between. And if I'm doing that, I can hit delete. And by hitting delete, I close that gap. So I'll do that again. I have my gap right here, and I hit the delete key, and that closes the gap between these two clips, the outgoing and the incoming clip. Another thing to make sure of if you're doing something like that is here we have our snap in timeline magnet. So with this on, whenever I move my clips, you'll see it'll snap into place. So it'll snap at that outgoing clip, it'll snap to my playhead, it'll snap for the incoming clip. Okay, so if this is off, what happens is I could put it close to this other clip.
We have
and let's take a look at this.
Lens cover that opens when,
and we're getting a little flash frame. We're getting a couple frames of black, and you could do one of two things. You could put the snap in timeline, or S is the shortcut for snapping, back on, and you snap right into place. Let me make sure I'm moving my playhead and it's snapping to right there. You'll see that little, the little kind of curved triangle that it's making, that lets you know where it's snapping to, and I let go,
that opens when you
and that flash frame is gone. Okay, I'm doing several layers of edit undo. So now let's get back to our tools and the timeline. So that we looked at the selection tool, the track select forward, track select backward tool, and a little bit at how we could utilize the razor blade tool. Another thing you could do with the selection tool before I move on is whenever you go and mouse over the tail end or the front of a clip, you can trim it. You could or extend it just by dragging, and you could see at the bottom how much you're increasing the clip's duration. So here it's plus 12 frames, and it'll give you the new duration of that clip right next to it. So here we know it's exactly a 2-second clip because we're adding 5 frames onto it. Okay, so again, different ways that you could trim and work with clips and manipulate them to achieve what you imagine. And over here, if we look at the source window, if I double click on a clip, I could do the same thing. I could pull it in, and you'll see that gap that's happening on the timeline. And let me, I could bring it far in or extend it all the way back out. And it's not going to extend in your source window beyond the extent of where you could pull it. That is to say that if you have an incoming clip next to it, it's not going to overwrite your incoming clip. It's going to stay within there. But if I bring it up to another track and I extend it, I could then extend it, and it's overlapping the track below it. Okay, so moving on, let's just say I wanted to trim that with the razor tool. I could do that. Let's drop this down. The ripple edit tool. So for the ripple edit tool, let's first see, this is the, and let me drop that bed back down. So we could play this back again, going to the selection tool, dropping it down, and we'll come back up here. Okay, so the ripple edit tool, we'll see this is the, these are the clips that we're working with. This will be the outgoing, and this is the incoming. So what I'm able to do is I could extend a clip just like I extended before, but when I extend it here, let me scroll out to show you what's happening. You know what? It's wants me to be able to see the tool. Okay. So when I extend it as much as possible, it's shifting the entire sequence to compensate for that that extension. So you know, it's basically the equivalent of doing a track select, shifting everything over, and making it shift over the same amount that I'm extending the clip, or trimming the clip here. And again, that's ripple edit tool. Rolling edit tool is a little bit different. So here I can make changes in the end point of, or my, I'm sorry, my out point of my outgoing clip and my in point of my incoming clip, and not affect the rest of the sequence. So again, I'm just affecting these two clips. So it's the, if I drag in the center, it's affecting the end point of this first clip and the in point of this second clip. And that is the rolling edit tool. Now we also have the rate stretch tool. So to demonstrate this, I'm going to delete this clip over here. And let's see if there's one. I want a clip with a little bit more movement in it. And I know these aren't the most action-packed, but, you know, just some subtle. Okay, so maybe this menu. Okay, so I'll delete some of these clips here. And if I go over here to the rate stretch tool, let's play the clip first.
A touch screen.
And now if I come in closer and I drag this, I could extend it. Now what's happening is it's changing the speed and the duration of the clip, or the speed of the clip to match the duration that I just changed it. Normally, if you want to change the duration, you would do it numerically, holding down Control click. You could go to speed and duration. It's also in the drop-down menu, and you go in here, you go to speed, and you put in your % number, or you could do it by duration, and you put in your specific seconds and frames, or you could reverse speed if you so will. So now let's take a look at this. You could see that slow motion.
To get to the menus, an HDMI connection, power, a playback.
Okay, and I'm just going to edit undo, and we'll take a look at the original.
Screen to get to the menus.
Okay, so you could use these tools to help, you know, for this instructional video, I would say this is helpful. If you're doing something more narrative based, then slow motion tends to be a little bit more obvious and you want to be very deliberate about it. But that said, it is a tool that you can use in your repertoire of tools to help manipulate your clips and your sequences to meet what you envision. Another tool that we could use, we've already looked at the razor tool. Let's look at it one more time. So let's just say in here I wanted to make a cut. Well, I could do that, go back to my selection tool, and let's just say I wanted to insert the next clip in between where I just split the clip into two. Well, I could easily do that now by using the razor.
Touch screen to get to the menus.
And then it jumps between it's a single shot of the touch screen that I split into two, and I inserted another shot in the middle. So just be aware that you can do that sort of thing with this razor tool. I'd say the tools that you're going to use most is going to be the selection tool, the razor tool, and for sound we'll get to it, but the pen tool, the zoom tool as well. But I find using this at the bottom is very helpful, and don't go to it as often. Okay, so the slip tool, what it lets me do is I could click on a clip, and now it won't let me do it. I could click on a clip, and I could drag the clip's in point and the clip's out point without affecting anything else. So right now it's only affecting this clip's in point and out point. We're keeping the same duration for this clip. It's just we're changing what that in point and out point from the source material is. It's not affecting the rest of the sequence, and it's not shifting anything along. It's only singular to this clip. Now, if we take a look at the slide tool is affecting the surrounding clips. So the clip before it, the outgoing clip, and the clip after the one that I'm manipulating here, the outgoing clip, the incoming clip rather. So those two clips are being affected. As I drag this clip to the left, I'm trimming the outgoing clip, so the clip before it, and I'm extending the clip that it's going into, the incoming clip, to the right of it. And by dragging it to the right, I'm doing the reverse, and we could see how many frames I'm adding or subtracting. So from where I previous dropped it. So I dropped it there. Now I'm going -1 second. But you get the idea where you could shift it in between these two. It's not affecting or making any kind of ripple effects to the sequence by large. Only these 3 clips it is affecting. Now the pen tool. So the pen tool, let me go to where we have let's go here because we have some effects to sound. Okay, so for the pen tool, we could drop in these different nodes. But before I do, let me just select these, delete them, go to the selection tool and show you again. By dropping down the levels.
Lens cover that opens when you open up.
When there's no nodes, it does it to the entire clip. So I could bring this all the way.
The LCD screen.
All the way down. If I wanted to ride the levels a bit, where I'm trying to balance the levels, or you know, it's a fade in, or we're going to a bed of sound, I could bring the levels up here and then gradually drop them down.
We have a lens cover that opens.
Okay, and I'm doing this as an extreme so you could see what actually is going on. It's not practical to fade all the way down to not hearing your sound in the middle of a voiceover, but for demonstration purposes, it's fine. Okay, and over here, I'll do the same to the bed. So sometimes you'll see this, like the bed will come up, and your voiceover.
Front, we have a lens cover that opens when you open up the LCD.
Now let's do that more in line with one another. So
in the front, we have a lens cover.
So here we're fading in, and there we're fading out. And then we could do the reverse, where, you know, we're coming in from some hot level of music bed, and I'm just trying to make sure this is in line, and we're bringing up our voiceover. So
in the manual ring, we have a lens cover that opens when you open up the LCD screen.
Okay, so and now there's no bed because that's dropped down to negative infinite. Okay, so that's the pen tool there. We can also, and maybe we'll do this on another deeper dive video where we create masks, but we can drop in some shapes or create masks for video, which is kind of like a cookie cutter effect. But we can create shapes, and it'll create a graphic on our timeline. If I go to the selection tool, I could double click on that graphic and go to the effects control. I could change the fill color. So let's just say I use the eyedropper. I wanted to match that, and you could do keyframes. So let's say I wanted this shape to change over time. I could, move it over here and go to the pen tool and then kind of change its position, and then it creates another keyframe here, and then this is known as tweening. So you could get really technical with how you utilize these tools, but right now I just want you to be aware that they exist for creating shapes if you need it for your titles. Then there's also rectangle tool, and just by dragging, I'm creating a rectangle, or I hold down the shift key to make a square as I'm dragging. And same thing for the ellipse tool. I could drag and create an oval, or hold down the shift key, and that will create a circle. And those are the graphics. But right now I'm kind of going to ditch the graphics and move on. We have our hand tool, and our hand tool, similar to the scroll bar down here, I'm sure it has a name, the horizontal scroll bar. So right now I could just drag with the hand tool and navigate the timeline. Also, if I was zoomed in very close, I could drag my program or my source if I was zoomed in over there. So if you ever want to see something up close, you want to check focus, or you've seen something that might be an artifact or some reason to zoom in closer to your image, you can do so, and you could manipulate the position of that. Again, there's scroll bars here, horizontal and vertical, that you could use, but you could also use that hand tool for that. Then we have the zoom tool, and the zoom tool will let you zoom in, very similar to this, dragging on the ends of the bar down here below our sequence. So we could zoom in, and you just take a look. I'm going to zoom out or pull it out. So you could see this represents from the beginning to the end 10 minutes, roughly. Okay, so that's our these are our units of measurement. These are, kind of close to, probably like 20 to 30 second intervals up here. Now, as we get tighter by using the zoom tool, now look, we've essentially halved that to where now the larger part of our timeline equals 5 minutes, and then closer still, we're dealing with seconds and frames. And as we get even closer, we're down to the frame, where every single movement on the playhead, as I scrub, shows our position on the frame. If you wanted to zoom out, you hold down the Alt or the Option key, depending if you're using a PC or a Mac, and you can zoom out. Okay, now finally we'll take a look at the Type tool. And the Type tool does as advertised. It lets us type text into our frames. So up here, I could put deeper dive Type tool. Now I could drop down the text and watch what happens if I wanted to make changes to the font here. So let's just say I go to Monaco or something else. Well, nothing's happening when I'm changing it. That's because we have to be within the Type tool and highlight our text that we want to change. So we could change the font size, the alignment. Here I have it centered. And now we could go in and change what type of font we're using. So we could change the fill color. We could add a stroke to it. So you could get creative. We could increase the size of that stroke. I'm just gonna go for kind of similar but lighter color. Actually, no, I want contrast, so I'm gonna do the reverse. I'm gonna go for a darker color here, and I could do a drop shadow. So let's go with kind of like a blue tinted drop shadow. I could adjust the opacity of that drop shadow, its direction, its distance, and how much it's being feathered or blurred. And now we could see this is our type. if we wanted to change its position, like center it, we could go to the graphics, align, and we could go to vertical center and graphics, align, horizontal center, and that will center it according to the frame of your sequence and nothing else. So, you know, similar if you were using Illustrator, Photoshop, your canvas. So, okay, so that is the standard type tool. We also have our vertical type tool, and here I could you know, type in some text here, and it'll carry over my formatting from the previous type tool that I was using. And let's just say, oh, I'm affecting the wrong one. So yeah, you'll notice they're both living within this graphic. So which one you're actually modifying is determined or indicated by the red outlined area. Okay, so I want to go in here. I want to change this, and let's just say I don't want to fill. I don't want to stroke. I was hoping to just create it as a graphic element. Maybe if I go in here and give it a similar color. And I'm just going to reduce this, increase the blur. And here I could use here's the transform tools. Just like if you were going to do go into your effects window for your video clips, you could transform, adjust the scale. Although whenever using type, I would leave it always at 100. Change your font size if you need to. You know, it's trying to make it a graphic element, so kind of subdued back there. Okay, so that is the Adobe Premiere deeper dive into our tools. We covered the selection tool that lets us extend our clips, position them. We could do range select by mousing down and grabbing onto multiple clips at once. Our track select forward and track select backward tool to select everything forward from where we click, or from the beginning to where we click within the sequence. We looked at the ripple edit tool, the rolling edit tool, and the rate stretch tool. We took a look at the razor tool to split our clips, our slip and our slide tools, our pen tool, especially to manipulate sound and bring in those keyframes, our zoom tool, our hand tool, and our type tool. And that concludes our Adobe Premiere deeper dive into using tools.